Before I get started in the sermon or reading, this is Love and Liberation by Adrienne Marie Brown from her work, Emergent Strategy. She writes, "One thing I have observed, when we are engaged in acts of love, we humans are at our best and most resilient. The love in romance that makes us want to be better people, the love of children that makes us change our whole lives to meet their needs, the love of family that makes us drop everything to take care of them, the love of community that makes us work tirelessly with broken hearts. Perhaps humans' core function is love. Love leads us to observe in a much deeper way than other emotions. I think of how delightful it is to see something new in my lovers' faces, something they may know only from inside as a feeling. If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact on what is considered organizing. If the goal was to increase the love rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everything we meet, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential. We would organize with the perspective that there is wisdom and experience and amazing story in the communities we love. And instead of starting up new ideas or organizations all the time, we would want to listen, support, collaborate, merge, and grow through fusion, not competition. We would understand that the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. Scaling up, then, would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable and more empathetic." I don't know if any of you watched the Olympics that recently ended. I know many people did because I got to see all sorts of things in my social media feeds. It is astounding what human bodies are capable of and how effortless their extensive, regimented training makes it all seem. The thing that I was most particularly struck with this year was not so much the individual performances, although there were many that were awesome. What struck me most was how Olympians were in relationship with one another. Of course, most of what I saw highlighted our US teams, but I was so impressed with what I saw. The way that teammates cared for one another, how they were competitors, yes, but also friends. The way they supported each other and celebrated each other's accomplishments. There was the podium after the women's gymnastic floor exercises with Simone Biles placing second and Jordan Childs third, first having been won by Brazilian Rebecca Andrade. We saw the first all-Black Olympics gymnastics podium in history, and our gymnasts bowed down next to her on the podium, celebrating her victory with her. In an article from Salon, Biles said, "I think it's all about sportsmanship, and we don't care whether we win or lose. We're always going to keep a good face and support our competitors because they've worked just as hard as we have for that moment. So you have to give them their flowers." And that's exactly what me and Jordan were doing, and we were so happy for her. She deserved it. She had the best floor routine of the day and in the Olympics, so it's like, yeah, she deserved it. It was just the right thing to do. She's queen. Then there was the pommel horse guy, Steven Nedorozic. Having trained as a gymnast for years, he began focusing on the pommel horse when a coach noticed his great skill in that one event. The U.S. men's Olympic team chose to add him to their tight roster of competitors because he was so strong on the pommel horse that it seemed likely that he could help the team place as a whole. It would have been easy to make fun of Nedorozic for being a one-trick pony of sorts, but nope. Everyone was excited for his performance where he placed third and had an important part in the whole team placing third overall, the first time the U.S. had placed in the top 3 in 16 years. Another favorite moment of mine was following the final match of women's boxing. Yang Lu embracing gold medalist Iman Khalif and celebrating Khalif's victory with her. Khalif was repeatedly referred to as a man by critics in the previous days, and Lu's response was just so tender and human. And more, women who were in Paris to watch the Olympics and had had no previous interest in boxing swarmed to watch Khalif compete, buying and waving Argentinian flags from the stands to show their support for her. They wanted Khalif and the world to know she wasn't alone and that women from all over supported her and her competition. To me, these are not just wonderful demonstrations of sportsmanship, but also reflective of a greater trend that I've been seeing emerge in pockets around the world. People recognizing that we can compete and still want to see each other excel and do wonderful, beautiful things, and knowing that it doesn't make us less or detract from what we're doing. They're all rocking what they got in powerful and meaningful ways. There's a meme that goes around on Facebook that I love that says, "You can't compete with me. I want you to win too." Witnessing this happening at the height of competition, at least in sports in the world, among many athletes, not just our U.S. delegates, has been so good for my heart, and I'm sure that of many others. It helps us remember that we're all in this together, whether we're competing or not. Our U.S. American culture is deeply rooted in ideals of individualism and scarcity mentality. These are part of our white supremacy culture and keep us from what is possible when we collaborate and support and care for each other. Isms like racism and classism and sexism and others have been created to keep us separated, which goes against our deepest instincts and needs, which call us to be in relationship with one another. Humans are social creatures all the way into our DNA and into our bones. We are wired for connection with each other, and disconnection only creates ache. Even Thoreau, one of our most notable independent people in American history, who did his social experiment living at Walden Pond for 2 years, was still constantly connected with his family and friends, although this is often overlooked. While our and many Olympians may not refer to it this way, they are in fact creating together an iteration of the beloved community, the beloved kingdom that so many of us as Unitarian Universalists, as people of faith, also want to create. Years ago now, I heard about a time bank starting in my community. A time bank is a mutual exchange network where people can share resources, services, and skills with each other, but not necessarily one-to-one. For example, I might want a photo shoot, but the photographer is interested in getting their oil changed, which is not my skill set. But I can offer to make a chocolate truffle cake for someone else, and that person can watch someone else's dog, and someone else can do the oil change, and in the end, we all get what we needed. The phrase used over and over again in time banking, which is also a community building tool, helping neighbors get to know one another, is, "We have what we need if we use what we have." Those words come from Edgar Kahn of blessed memory, and are words that run through my mind frequently as I think about how we can navigate through situations where there's frustration and strain. Edgar wasn't simply an idealist. He was an accomplished attorney, law professor, and for a time was counsel and speechwriter for Robert Kennedy, the good one that you remember. He used his skill and expertise to advocate for social reforms, including Native rights and for those who are marginalized and oppressed. My very own first exchange was as a pair of hands. I was pretty excited to know that there was something in my skill set that I could offer. The woman who was asking for the pair of hands needed them to put plastic in her windows to try to insulate from some of the winter cold. and just needed someone to hold it up so that she could seal it. She lived a little over a block away, my literal neighbor, who I doubt I would have met otherwise. In the time bank, we started celebrating the people who went into the negative, who made requests in the community and spent more credits on receiving than giving. We celebrated it because if everyone only wants to give, the system can't work. We needed people who wanted or needed something to be able to offer to meet that need or want. I also learned through time banking the importance of letting people do things that they enjoyed. We used to say that if you were a plumber and never really wanted to look at a plumbing job ever again in your life, you didn't need to offer plumbing services. You could offer something else that you enjoyed or learn something that you've always wanted to, like Latin or guitar or painting or gardening or whatever. Again, we were trying, although those words would not have been used, to build a beloved community within our own neighborhoods and towns. That shouldn't be a chore, but a way to connect with others that is bound to lead to conversation. Even at its most basic, as a transactional relationship, it would provide you with someone you now knew who was a neighbor that you might be able to reach out again to if you had a need. The system of time banking Con worked out had 5 core principles: assets, redefining work, reciprocity, social networks, and respect. We are all assets. We all have something to give. Some work is beyond price. Work has to be redefined. To create the village that raises healthy children, builds strong families, revitalizes neighborhoods, makes democracy work, advances social justice, and even makes the planet sustainable is valuable work. It needs to be honored, recorded, and rewarded. Helping others works better as a two-way street. The question, how can I help you, needs to change, so we ask, how can we help each other build the world we all want to live in? We need each other. People joined in shared purpose are stronger than individuals. Helping each other, we reweave communities of support, strength, and trust. Community is built upon sinking roots, building trust, creating networks. Special relationships are built on commitment. And every human being matters. Respect underlies freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and everything we value. Respect supplies the heart and soul of democracy. When respect is denied to anyone, we are all injured. We must respect where people are in the moment, not where we hope they will be at some point in the future. While capitalism attempts to factor in such things as skill, education, and other elements, time banking attempts to factor in different variables like community building, equality, and value. One thing that time banking gives us that capitalism does not is community, roots, interconnection, the beginning of trust, a network of people who become yours. It gives us something more than what we can simply pay for. I remember a time bank friend made soup once and brought me some, and I gave her a time credit for it as a thank you. She was like, "I just want to be nice to you." She didn't want the time credit. There is no accounting for that kind of care, and no value apart from reciprocation can be given for it. Those roots give us wings to truly and deeply care for one another. Communities aren't simply created or made. They are recreated and remade with every exchange or interaction we have or don't have. They grow and shrink and change over time. I've heard more than once that we struggle with change, and I want to reflect back to you that although this may feel true, it's not the only truth. Another truth is that you have changed and that you are changing. One way that we change more easily is when we celebrate instead of complain. It's easy to fall into the trap of we don't have enough people or resources or whatever. Maybe if I just fix my hair or my body or my background, we'll be somewhere else. But again and again, I witness this power We try new things when we feel our community supports us, when we feel assured and reassured that we aren't alone and won't be abandoned, when we trust that if it doesn't go as planned, that our community will be there to catch us and carry on. We rise by lifting others is a well-known quote from Robert Ingersoll, which I've adapted into, we will all rise only by lifting each other. There's no bootstraps here, no good luck figuring that out. This is a place of people who make a choice again and again to show up and be here for each other and want to figure out how to make this a place and a community where others feel celebrated and lifted up and held. We make the road by traveling on it. And so in order to achieve this vision for the world, we must begin here. If Olympians can do this, if people in a community who don't know each other and likely don't share the same beliefs and values can do this, what if we tried to do this too? We are brought and held together by our covenants, the promises and aspirations and hopes about how we will be together and to what end. As a religious community, as a pluralistic faith that embraces the truth, wisdom, and beauty from all traditions and faiths, I often describe our covenant as agreeing to be in relationship with one another, both in spite of and because of our differences, as we travel our spiritual paths together, challenging and celebrating each other, and all of us together along the way. This is the call of our faith, to honor one another and to make the world a better place in a community that values such change. This is what it means to live into the values we voted on this summer at our annual General Assembly, values that call us to act in ways that will help us bring into existence the beloved community we talk about. They give us direction in how to live into our faith in our lives and in the world. This is what church is about. This is what religious communities have been doing for millennia, providing direction, guidance, support, and wisdom to us all. Our faith has changed dramatically over the generations, but has sought again and again to be more inclusive and expansive in its theology. It calls us back to each other over and over, whatever direction it takes us in. As the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd writes in her book, After the Good News, if God's name is love, then God compels us to resist the fall to sinful violence by pushing back with muscular resolve against the social structures that confine our capacity to care. A universalist God for a tragic era is not a gauzy, hymn-singing force of personal devotion that draws us endlessly toward itself, but a fierce and compelling power that grips us by the collar amid our rebellious descent and calls us to choose the will to mutuality over and over again, even when that choice is so risky that it could utterly remake us. We come together to be with people who share a good number of our ideas about a more just, beautiful, and meaningful life for all of us. We come together to have people we know and who know us, who we want to share our best and worst moments with, knowing we will be celebrated and held. We gather to rock what we got as a people of faith. We come together to practice the very essence of what it means to be human and to be restored in our faith in ourselves and the world over and over. We come together because we know that we will all rise when we lift each other.